Good morning and welcome to Law Talks here on 4CRB. For many families, inheritance is something that sits quietly in the background. Parents work hard to build a life, accumulate estates, and naturally want to leave something behind for the next generation. But it also raises an interesting question. Should children expect to inherit? In recent years, there's been growing discussion around what some commentators are calling inheritance impatience, where adult children begin to view an inheritance as something they're entitled to rather than something that may or may not happen. We're also seeing more conversations around early inheritances, where parents choose to help children financially during their lifetime instead of leaving everything in their will. At the same time, inheritance can sometimes become a source of conflict within families, particularly when people feel they have been treated unfairly. So today we're looking at the moral and legal questions surrounding inheritance. Joining us is Attwood Marshall Lawyers Legal Practice Director, Jeff Garrett. Thanks for joining us this morning, Jeff.
Morning, Robin. Thanks for having me.
Well, inheritance is something people often assume will happen one day, and generally there's a level of expectation around it. From a legal perspective, do adult children actually have the right to inherit from their parents?
Short answer is no. I think that most adult children would be listening to that, shaking their heads in disbelief. While there is a general moral obligation by parents or for parents to support their adult children, there's ingredients that go into whether an adult child has a claim. And if those ingredients aren't present, then there's no natural assumption that an adult child or children will inherit their deceased parents' estate. And one of the most important things with that, and it often comes up where there's, say 4 adult children, the expectation amongst the children and even in society is that those 4 adult children will inherit equally. Most parents leave their estates to their kids equally. And nothing could be further from the truth when it comes to the court's decisions in relation to that happening. And that's probably one of the biggest myths out there at the moment.
And we're hearing more discussion about inheritance impatience, where adult children start thinking about their inheritance long before their parents have even passed away. Is that something you're seeing?
Yes, it's really something that is becoming more and more prevalent with adult children moving in on their parents' financial affairs and treating the assets of their parents like their own. And, to the extent where the elderly parents are pretty much left with nothing and the family home is being sold up and money's paid to adult children, or they're utilising assets that the parents own during their lifetimes with that very clear expectation that, hey, these assets are ours. And their parents are still alive and kicking well and truly and are being almost financially abused by their adult children.
Yeah, terrible. And some parents, Jeff, are now choosing to provide early inheritance by helping children with things like buying a home or setting up a business while they're still alive. What are some of the pros and potential pitfalls of doing that?
Yes, well, there's nothing wrong with that. And lots of parents are doing it. You've heard of the bank of mum and dad. That's going around a lot these days. And most parents do help their children financially. You just got to be careful that the legal issues and taxation issues and even Centrelink entitlements don't get affected by some of those gifts.
Yeah.
And you've also got to be careful about your own children's relationships, because whoever they're married to or in a de facto relationship with, those things can be affected by gifts from the parents when that relationship breaks down. So if there's a divorce or a separation, etc., then you can have a lot of arguments about whether the assets or money that was given to the child is a gift or is it a loan?
Yeah. And when disputes arise after someone passes away, the law looks at several factors when deciding whether a family provision claim should succeed. What are some of the key things the courts consider?
Financial need of the person involved is probably the biggest, but it also looks at the relationship that the person bringing the claim had with the deceased. And another layer of that is how much is in the estate and what are the competing claims of the beneficiaries, in most cases, the children. So court looks at all of those issues in determining whether someone has a claim.
And one of those factors we often hear about is financial need. Why does that tend to carry so much weight when courts are deciding whether someone should receive provision from an estate?
I think it speaks for itself. If someone has accumulated wealth during their lives, they're financially comfortable, they don't need the money. They don't need to bring a claim against the estate. Whereas someone who does not have those resources, maybe has not had the same opportunities during their lives, whether that be, self-imposed or not, they have a financial need. And in those circumstances, they are the ones that the court will usually look to make provision for.
Well, Jeff, sometimes the person bringing a claim might be someone the family considers to be the black sheep of the family. Perhaps there's been estrangement or a past conflict. Does that automatically rule them out, or can the court still consider their circumstances?
Yes, the black sheep. Most families have got at least one. Some have several. But they're an interesting case whenever you see them. Estrangement is often the cause of them being branded the black sheep. There's usually something that they have done or continue to do that puts them at odds with the family. So it depends on the level of estrangement and the conduct of the black sheep involved as to whether that would stop them from bringing a claim. But the general gist of the decisions is that the behaviour or the conduct has to be pretty bad for a court to determine that they have disqualified themselves from bringing a claim. Again, sometimes the financial need will outweigh the conduct and still ensure that they are rewarded something from the estate.
And for parents thinking about their own wills, what should they keep in mind if they're planning to leave unequal gifts or exclude someone altogether?
Yeah, probably two different issues there. But one of the things, they don't have to do this, and some of them don't do it because they don't feel comfortable discussing it with their children. But be open with your children about it. Tell them about what you're proposing. That might cause a little bit of initial angst, but let them know that this is why I'm providing a bit more for, child number 2. That might help stop the quibbling and the arguments. If you have a child who you genuinely don't want to provide for and leave out of the will, get advice from an experienced estate planning lawyer who can tell you about what the prospects are of avoiding a claim. Because cutting someone out of your will, it might sound easy and you might think that's it. They will probably bring a claim depending on whether they fall into the ingredients of what we were talking about before. And it could be avoided if you make some type of provision for them. Now, it has to be reasonable. That doesn't mean leaving someone $1, because that's another myth that you only got to leave them $1. You got to leave them something, and that stops a claim. That's not right. It has to be adequate provision. So as much as it may gall you, once you get the advice, you may well be better off accepting the advice that it's going to take a certain percentage of your estate to be left to them to avoid a claim.
Yeah, that becomes a very elongated and costly affair if things are disputed after you're gone. Well, that's all we have time for on Law Talks today, Jeff. While the law provides a framework, it's clear that careful planning it can go a long way in preventing disputes down the track. So thanks for joining us this morning, Jeff.
Thank you, Robin.
You've been listening to Law Talks here on 4CRB, which you can hear every Friday morning from 9 o'clock.